open the policy subcommittee meeting for August 13th as a Zoom meeting. I know there are certain things I'm supposed to say. I don't know what they are, except that this meeting is being recorded by cable, WBIC cable, and I don't know that we don't have any public participants, do we, Christy?
Yes, we do.
Oh, we do. I'm sorry. I couldn't see.
Well, she was there and now she's jumped off. So nope.
Okay.
Well, Brittany's there.
Yeah.
Brittany's recording.
Oh,
It's
okay.
Haley is.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we have an agenda, and I'm going to mess with it a little bit because for two reasons. One is I have one additional item that I need to discuss, and then I'm going to approach this agenda from the same topics but in different order to try to make some sense out of this and address some of the things that we can move most quickly on or might be most useful for the district right at this moment. So the first thing is that's not on the agenda is that MASC sent out an update here. Can you see my screen, you guys?
Yes.
Okay. And this is a requirement from the US DOE, changes to the Title IX regulations. And the Mass Attorney General, if you look at the bottom, the Mass Attorney General has joined her counterparts in other states in filing a lawsuit against this policy from the US DOE. But regardless, effective August 14th, school committees are required to adopt an evidentiary standard of either, I have to get these pictures out of the way here, either preponderance of the evidence greater than blah, 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 or beyond reasonable doubt standard. And they advise that we consult with legal about how to proceed. Now, where do I see that? Oh, and there's this implication here. They've given us an attached policy to use. The above referenced employees must attend training sessions on the implementation of the policy. That has implications for PD, particularly since it's supposed to be effective August 14th. And it says somewhere here to, says unless a court orders a stay of the proposed regulations, school districts must comply. Somewhere in here, which I'm not seeing at the moment, it says to consult with legal before you adopt this policy or to decide how to proceed.
I think it's in the second paragraph, the last sentence.
Yeah, thank you. Strongly urges school committees to consult with legal counsel concerning the adoption of the standard and the policy itself. So what I'm going to propose here is that, I don't know if am I allowed to contact, who is it, Russ, independently, or do I have to go through?
Oh, you can contact them.
Jim or anything? I could just contact him directly?
Yes.
Okay, and is it best to reach out on this kind of thing with a phone call or email for him? Because I imagine he's swamped right now.
I would say send it to him. Just send him, because he may have already seen this from somebody. So, I would just send it to him first and say, please advise on what we should do here. Because he might already have a template, something written up that we can just use. So. All
right. So I will do that. And I will, if you think, because of this August 14th date, if you think that I should just report out on this at the next school committee meeting. And if there is some action that we need to take, I should just bring it forward. I'm not sure. What do you think I should do?
I think at the meeting where you're going to report out on the rest of these, just say that we're working on it and that you've sent it to Russ.
All right. But if I
unless Russ stipulates that we should take action at that meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if he gives us advice to do it, but otherwise.
Okay.
I mean, we're not in school at that time, so even though it has to be, it's effective that date, schools are still on break, summer break, so it's
Yeah.
not going to have any consequences.
Well, we hope not.
Yeah, I
All
know.
we know is that we're expected to comply effective August 14th, and you are expected to comply with PD, some kind of training around this. So I just want to
Well,
make sure that we don't.
What does comply mean? Does comply mean it has to be done? Does comply mean we have to show progress on it?
Well, they didn't say.
That's a good question for Russ.
Yeah.
What's compliance?
I mean, it
constitute?
wouldn't surprise me to get something one week that you have to have done by the next week. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me at all, but I don't know if that's the case here.
We got this back on, yeah, August 3rd.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm making a note here.
Wow, there's a short timeline. August 3rd, they notify you, you have to comply by August 14th. And of course, it's summer.
And that's why I'm thinking it may be just have progress or show significant progress on it, something like that. But Russ will know because I'm sure he's seen this by now.
Okay, all right, so I will follow up with him, and at our next meeting, or at the school committee meeting, I'll give an update on that, okay? All right.
That's good.
So these policies, what I did was I went through all the policies, and I just spent time just digesting the language and what they were trying to do with these. And what I saw, the way they made sense to me, was that MASC is taking 4 approaches to these policy changes, this long list of policy changes. The first is they've introduced a couple of new policies. The main general interim policy on COVID-related issues, that's the big umbrella policy, and then a face covering policy. Those are 2 new policies. They are saying, okay, we want you to make sure there's certain language in your back to school plans, because your back to school plans are serving as district policy during the pandemic. So with certain policies, we just want you to make sure, we want you to make sure in your back to school plans that you have said you will take care of these things. And so that's what the second column is. The third strategy is to just add a brief note reminder to some policies. They're not really policy changes, but they're saying, don't forget if you do such and such that this has implications. So I think this is probably the quickest column to say, okay, yeah, to add that language. And the fourth strategy is to clarify the superintendent's authority to make changes, and to make sure that the superintendent is in a pretty nimble position for making changes and not too encumbered. And what I started to see when I looked at all the policies that fell in that category is there was a range of references. So in column H, for example, it said, okay, the superintendent can make these changes. And they use language like the superintendent may provide, the superintendent may acquire, establish, amend, modify, revise, adapt, suspend, or some combination of those. Sometimes that was stated in conjunction with things down at the end here, as long as it's in accordance with the law or regulations out there, as long as it's in accordance with DESE guidance, as long as it's you've considered or it's subject to provisions with collective bargaining. So sometimes it says the superintendent can do this unfettered. Sometimes it says the superintendent can just do this as long as you're in line with these other players. Sometimes it said the superintendent needs to inform. You can do what you want, but you have to make sure the school committee is informed of what you're doing. And sometimes it says the superintendent can propose or recommend or get the approval of the school committee to do something. So I started just looking through the language of these, and I tried to code what I saw going on and look to see if, just generally at a high level, if these made sense, which they do to me, I think. So for example, with pupil transportation here, row 11, they say there's some things to include in the back to school plans. Says the superintendent can make changes to pupil transportation as long as you're in line with laws and regulations, and that no other player needs to be involved in those decisions, the way that the added language is for this pandemic period. So as I look through these, I think they made sense. When you get down here, school year, school calendar, the superintendent can make changes, but basically has to have everybody on board approving that, the union, the DESE guidance, the school committee. So let me just take pause at this point and see if this chart is making any sense to you, or the way that I was looking at this makes any sense to you.
I like it a lot. I like the way you were able to break it down, especially in regards to clarifying the superintendent authority, all of those boxes. That's really helpful to me as a committee member.
Yeah, okay. Jeff, are you still on?
I am.
Okay, just
Yeah.
can't see you. We can't see you now. Does this chart make any sense to you, or is it?
No, it does. It makes perfect sense to me.
Okay. So I added a column at the very front here so Christy could keep track of what we're doing with any of these policies as we discuss and move through them. But what I was thinking, also these things in blue were policies that were not on MASC's list, but in my mind, rose to the level where we're probably going to want to discuss these, even if they're not on MASC's list yet. For example, these 4 technology policies, if we end up with remote learning or even with hybrid learning, we want to make sure that our technology policies reflect how we're wanting to use and how we want students and families and teachers to be using technology in those modes of operation. So I added a couple of, is it there? Attendance was another one that I'll explain. So anything in blue is not in our folders yet, but is coming up on the plate. So what I thought might be useful for today would be to see if we can address these first 3 columns, these colored columns. One, new policies, particularly this general interim policy, because that's the umbrella language for everything else. This back to school plans, because Jeff is trying to get these plans submitted, and maybe some of these things are things that can just, this language can be inserted and we can know that's done. And these notes or updates, because I think these are quick. And then if we have any time, we can start to dig into the specific policy changes here. So is that okay with everybody if we proceed that way?
Okay with me.
Okay. Now, I did send a letter, a quick note to Dorothy Presser. I'm waiting for a response.
Susan, I did just receive the response from Dorothy, so it might be on your email.
Okay, oh, great, thank you. I don't want to go there without, do you want, is it okay for me to put it on the screen, Christy, or do you want to just share key information back?
Yeah, I can just read it for you real quick.
Okay.
She's answering your 4 questions. Number 1, I don't have the questions in front of me.
Yeah, the first question to me was the main one is this, in this document they sent us, it says file EBC supplemental, which is school emergency plans, but it says supplemental. So I was asking, is this entire document supposed to be a single policy with all
Yes.
these policy changes up front, rather than inserting them, all those changes, into the actual policies?
Yes, she says that this policy is intended to stand on its own. There is not the intention to amend every policy listed.
Okay, great. Okay, that's the most important thing that we'll come back to. So we're not making changes. We need to reference and discuss, you know, the context of the individual policies, but we're not actually making changes within all the individual policies. Does that make sense, Cliff and Jeff?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, Christy, what else? We got? That's
Answer to number 2 was the language on page 5 on pivoting would be in policy, but the actual description of how this works would most likely be found in the plan for returning to school that the school committee will vote or has voted on to approve.
Okay.
What
Yeah,
was
I
the
think-
question? What was the question?
Yeah, I think I was asking, there were some places here where she was referencing back to school plans, not policies. And so I was confused by that because I was thinking, well, is there some policy that this is supposed to go into, that this refers to?
Okay.
And what she's saying is, no, it's really about the back to school plan. So that's why I have this column F here. These are ones that really are not changing. I don't believe they're changing language in any, we'll have to check them as we go, but any particular policy, but we do have to address them within the back to school plan. Okay. Something else there, Christy?
Let me see. Number 3, in the bullet just below, oh no, that's your question. Hold on. The assumption is that students in quarantine would qualify for homebound instruction even though they may not be ill or hospitalized. So this would be the policy to reference here.
Okay, I'm not sure what that one is. I'll have to look back.
Question 3 was, in the bullet just below this, it references language changes to remote instruction for students in quarantine, but there's no specific policy cited.
Yes, okay, good. Okay, so that one we won't probably need today, so we'll reference in the next session.
All right, question number 4 was, near the top of page 3, there is recommended language for attendance, policy JH. JH is student absences and excuses. Policy JE is attendance. Which policy is the language intended for? And she says, our policy reference manual does not have a JE, so you would need to look at your own policies and decide the appropriate place, if any, to reference.
Okay, all right, so both of those, we'll look at both. Thank you, that's great. Good for her. She's a corker, boy. If you tell her when you need information by, she gets it right back to you in time for that. It's really, she's terrific.
Yeah, she provides great service.
She really does. And she's very clear. She doesn't leave you with a quick answer that you think, what does that mean?
Yep, exactly.
All right, so let's go. So this policy that we have, I'm trying to think, do you guys have the document that Christy and I are referencing? Yes. Hang on.
Which document are you talking about?
I think it's right here, EBC. So Christy has cut it and pasted it, the front part of this, into this emergency plans document where it's not going to go. It's going to be an EBC supplement. But if you we scroll down here, this red language here is the front language before all the specific policy changes. So this is the umbrella language, and we need to decide if this language is works for us or there's something else we need to consider. This is basically the rationale for having an interim policy on COVID-related issues. So it says the school committee takes note of this emergency resulting disruption of the traditional school day and year, growing concerns, blah, 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 the growing number of issues that will affect public education. Therefore, the school committee establishes an emergency interim plan to promote public safety and safety of students and faculty, maintain to the extent possible the high and efficient level of educational services, ensure support for students in general and in particular for those at highest risk, comply with the emergency orders of the governor and adhere to the extent possible to the guidance of DESE and other agencies, and expedite the safest strategy for returning students to school. The school committee will approve the final plan submitted to DESE, which will outline its strategy for returning students to school, and will, in collaboration with the superintendent, make such modifications to the back to school plan and district policy, and will authorize the superintendent to suspend, revise, or create protocols to facilitate the safe return to school. The superintendent will designate the appropriate staff members to oversee the safe administration of COVID-related policies during the period of the pandemic, and shall make such recommendations to the school committee as needed. The school committee will authorize the superintendent to act expeditiously in executing the back-to-school plan in accordance with current law and regulation, and will, where noted, authorize the superintendent to suspend, revise, or recommend rules and protocols as needed to serve the best interests and safety of students, families, and community. The back-to-school plan shall constitute the policy of the school district during the pandemic emergency, which puts I just want to take pause here because that puts a lot of weight on the back-to-school plan for being very clear about certain things. And that's why they've asked us to include certain language and address certain issues in the back-to-school plan. And the superintendent shall exercise the authority provided in law to carry out the plan as needed. General district goals affected by the pandemic. Superintendent, with the advice and consent of the school committee, may suspend or modify individual district goals to address the COVID-19 emergency. Such a suspension on a policy will expire upon the end of the emergency as declared by the governor. The goal of emergency pandemic policies shall be to, so some of these are a repeat of above, ensure safety and health, provide the most effective educational services, authorize changes to protocols, conduct district business and operational functions efficiently, allow the superintendent and staff to act quickly, facilitate the reestablishment of a safe school day and year. So this is the umbrella statement for, and it's the front part. And what MASC has sent us is this language, and then a whole lot of specific references to all these other policies that are in this chart. So for all of these, they've suggested certain language which you've seen in the policies. Christy has cut and pasted that language in red into those policies. But this language is the front language.
Does it stand, is it intended to
This
stand
language,
alone?
this was the first question I had written to Dorothy. This language, the document that Christy and I are referencing is a 6-page document that has this language and the language referenced for a bunch of individual policies, all in one document. So
Okay.
basically it's saying, look, here's our rationale for having a pandemic emergency policy. The school, the back to school plan is effectively our policy during this period. And here are the specific changes to policy. All our policies stand as usual, except for this list of whatever it is, 15 policies that we've added a little language to so that the superintendent has the authority to act nimbly around these issues. Does that make sense, Cliff?
It does make, it just makes sense. I'm just wondering how we're going to handle it. Is this language here going to stand alone as a separate policy, which
No, this
no,
will,
it's
this
going to be
will-
incorporated the way we've
no,
proposed?
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. This language will be, it won't be in this file EBC.
Oh,
it
that's
will
what
be-
I wanted to know. Yes.
Yeah. It will be a new document, a new policy called EBC Supplemental.
Okay, good. That's what I wanted to know. Good.
And the title of it is Creation of a General Interim Policy on COVID-Related Issues. And then everything related to policy changes for the pandemic is in that document.
Okay. Got it.
Jeff, does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. So how do you feel about this opening language?
I like it. You know, there's two pieces in here that I particularly like. Addresses a lot of things. And that I guide it all the time. You just make decisions. We don't just make decisions about what to do here. We're governed by what happens in the state and what the Department of Education tells us. That's it. And all of us, including school committee, is governed by those things. We're not just making decisions. And because this is all new to people, I think they're under the impression that, you know, superintendents or school committees just make decisions, but these come down from somebody. We just interpret what they're telling us to do. So I think this is important language. I really do.
Well, I think it is. I think it is too. You know, we're not a state like Florida, for example, where a county makes all the decisions for the schools. You know, like the individual communities don't make those decisions. It comes from a much higher authority. So we're not used to that in Massachusetts. Every school system functions on its own. We celebrate that. We like that about our systems. But what people don't realize is that we work inside a larger framework, that they just assume we do what we want when we want to.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I was wondering, and I have mixed feelings about this, but I was wondering if it would be useful to put this document as an addendum to this policy so that people can see that, or something slightly modified from this. But this clarifies superintendent authority becomes clear to people. So they can look down and say, oh, well, the superintendent is supposed to make these decisions, but it's in concert with these other entities, DESE or the law or collective bargaining. And it may help people see exactly what you're saying, that you're not just working at random here, that you are within a bigger structure. There may be another graphic that may be useful to have here that sort of just helps situate the superintendent, the school committee, the bargaining unit within this bigger frame of DESE, the governor, you know, state law and regulation.
I think that's a good idea, Susan, because we met with the communication group yesterday, the parents, about, you know, things they'd like to see us do next in terms of communicating with the district. And so I talked to them about, you know, all of these additions to our current policies, these sort of emergency additions that are going to be in place during the pandemic. And they seem very interested in what these, and usually you can't find anybody's interested in going to look at policies, but in this case, I do think they're interested in it, and they are interested in what we're doing and what I can do and what I can't do, and what school committee can do and what school committee can't do. You know, they're really in the dark about all this, and you know, we are to some extent too, but we get information. So I think the more of this we can put out, and I normally wouldn't say this, but in this case, you know, based on my discussions with these parents yesterday, they just, you know, they're very anxious. And anything we can put out like this so that they know that we are really working on this. We're not just sitting here. We are working on it. We're working not just through, you know, procedures in the school, like putting a procedure in place, but there are actual policies that govern what we do. And here they are. And here are the additions. So I think it would be important to do this.
So I'm just thinking to myself, the entity that's not referenced in here at all for influencing policy is, of course, parents, community entities, students. And so I think they need to understand that the way they can influence policy is when the decisions are falling here in the, well, whenever the superintendent's making decisions. So there's still another piece here where that's really not addressed here, except when you get to this role, what superintendent has to inform the school committee or propose something to the school committee, then there's a kind of public opportunity for parents to weigh in on something. But when you don't have to do that, when you have the authority to make changes yourself, I think parents want to know probably, what's the mechanism for us to be informed and to give opinions and perspective before you make those decisions. And so there's still room here for how these decisions get communicated to the community, and how community input is solicited prior to decision making.
Yeah, this might be an interesting tool for illustrating that to parents in the communication group. I have another question. Are we going to add the governor or the executive branch in here?
You know what? They haven't been referenced in anything except as state law or regulation. But yeah, that makes sense to me, because the governor can shut down schools, right? The governor can say
Exactly.
everybody has to go to remote learning.
Yeah.
Is that law? Does that follow? Should I add the governor to column M, or should it be his own column?
I have less of an opinion about that. I would like to see the executive branch in there because, especially given some of the rhetoric coming out of the governor's office, I almost wondered if he was going to order schools open.
Yeah, I know, it did sound like that.
So
what if it was in accordance with governor, what, decrees? What do we say? Governor, what? Governors?
yeah, I don't know what they are.
I think they come as orders.
Yeah, just call it order. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
How's that?
That's good. That's better, I think.
Yeah, I think that's good. That puts a sort of a state level up in place.
Yeah, because unlike, I mean, in my memory, I've never known a governor to be so involved in what the schools do.
Yeah.
You know, they're usually dealing with other things, and they allow the commissioner of education to sort of function on his own or her own.
Yeah, but this has become so political.
It is. I'm not suggesting it's a good thing the governor's this involved. I'm just saying the reality is this particular governor gets involved.
Yeah.
You're making me wonder if in this column, we should be referencing the Commissioner of Education in accordance with Commissioner of Education directives and/or DESE guidance.
Oh, I think that's absolutely, because our current Commissioner of Education, well, I'll keep my comments to myself.
Let's try that. That worked okay?
Yeah. Thanks for putting that in there. I think that's good.
It just, again, is trying to put some of those higher structures in place that influence what we do. And I just think in communicating with parents, Jeff, it's important for them to see them. I don't have a way to, we don't have language in our policies that say the superintendent will consult with the parent community or students or the broader community, town communities, before making a decision. We don't have language like that. Should we, or how do we help parent communities see themselves in this?
You know what? Let's post it. Let's post this along with, I told them we would post the new policies too, the ones that had to do with COVID-19.
Okay.
The next meeting with the parents, I'll go over this and, you know, ask them their opinion. They have a very unique perspective, one that, you know, I don't have about this community in particular, and Berlin also. So if we can put it up there, I know they're going to go there to look at it. And our next meeting with them, I'll go over this and ask them, you know, how, you know, about the sort of parent involvement piece here.
Okay.
I think, you know, I think it's right. Like a lot of times I've noticed, like parents will come to me and they'll ask me for something. I'll say, you know, this is a school committee policy. And I think what they don't realize is that and I might want to do something, but it's a policy and I can't, and I don't think they realize that they can influence that policy. They can have a say in how that changes to to better serve the community, because these are like general policies and they don't serve every community the same way. And so I think they're made to be altered.
Yeah, and I think the, the way these are written in general, the way policy is conceived of is very top down.
Yeah.
It is very state, U.S. Department of Ed, but they're not on here either, are they?
No,
they're not.
Maybe they should be.
That should probably, if you're going to put that in, it probably should be a separate column, because that's even above the governance.
There's nothing in the policies that say anything like this, except that, this harassment policy that just came through is a U.S. DOE.
That's federal. Yeah, that's a Title IX. Yeah. As you know, you've created such a great chart. Now, I mean, I don't think we'll be discussing today anything related to sports.
No, I don't think today, but it is on.
But an influencer, of course, and what we have to deal with is the MIAA when we get to sports policy.
Yeah, oh, okay. Now I did try to reference them this way. Hang on. Oops.
I'm sorry if you put it in, I didn't notice
No,
it.
I didn't name them. By standards by appropriate regulatory body.
Okay.
That's
Perfect.
how they were referred to in something here.
Okay.
It's not clear. I could put it, I mean, I don't know if there are other groups like that.
Yeah, give as an example, sure, that'd be good.
MI.
AA.
We should probably wait. I think the guidance on sports will come out next week, or they're supposed to come out next week.
Yeah, we're not going to do that today.
Yeah, so we should wait on that.
So back to this language here. Would you take issue? Do you think anything's missing here that's critical, or should we go with this overarching language? Propose this to the school committee, or do you think there are things that we should be adding? Or
My view is that this policy is a good overarching policy, and it gives us a framework.
I think I would agree with you. It tells you the goals, the big picture goals, that any policy that falls within this pandemic should address these kinds of things, particularly when you get down to this bottom list and it says, you're trying to conduct district business and operational functions as efficiently as possible. You're trying to give the superintendent certain authorities to just make something happen quickly sometimes. To change plans, school plans, and that kind of thing. And I think this names the main reasons why, Jeff, you would need to take care of some policy shifts.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we're in agreement then that this policy language, the front language, is good. We should keep it in place. So Christy, if you would just make a note that this EBC supplemental initial language is good with the committee. Now there's a piece on here. Christy, did you cut and paste this general district goals affected by the pandemic section? Oh no, that's already in there. Yeah, that's in there. Good. Okay, never mind. Forget it. Okay, so we've got the opening. That's good. Now, I want to skip this face covering one for a minute and go over to these back to school plan references in this document, because these may be something you can embed in your school plans that you're submitting, Jeff, and just know that these are done. So EEAC, hang on for a second. I just want to make sure I'm following along in this document. UAC.
What's the policy?
No, sorry, EEA, EEAA, EEAEC. These four here, these blue ones.
EA.
It's on the last page of the MASC.
It's all about kids getting to and from school.
Right. So if we go to into those, look at the bottom of the list here. EEA, for example. This is regional transportation, pupil transportation. This is our normal policy. And the pandemic policy would add this language. Subject to current law and regulation, the superintendent may suspend or modify policies related to transportation of students by the school district. Legal requirements relating to IEPs that contain transportation for students shall not be altered without the appropriate family consent. These modifications shall be consistent with the district back to school plan. So the reason this is on the list is because this is language that would be added to the pandemic policy, but we have to have it has to be aligned with what we have written in the back to school plan. Hang on one second.
I think this is probably put in here because this has to probably do with the fact that most districts cannot fit all of their students on buses anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be able to make decisions about this on the ground.
Yeah.
And, you know, people like the school committee shouldn't be in the middle of this. It's the only thing that should be guiding you are these laws around students with special needs or any other laws and regulations. But basically, you're going to need to be able to make decisions on the ground as things are happening here. And that's what this is really intended to do. It's just that you have to spell out what these modifications might entail, or you have to address that somehow in the back to school plan.
Yeah, there's two parts to this. One, the superintendent has the authority to suspend or modify the policies. And two, whatever those amendments or suspensions are, they have to be articulated in the back to school plan. So let everybody know that.
We in some ways, we have to start referring to it as the back to school policy. Right. So that's EEA, and the superintendent, I've graded this out. The superintendent can make these changes, but they have to be in line with the law.
Well, let me go back to something if I could. If we're looking at this as a back to school policy, do we want policy language in there? Because if you look at that plan, there's not, it's detailed, but then we also didn't put a lot of specifics in there because that's dealt with in the procedural piece in the schools. If we're going to look at it more as a policy, then I could just put policy language in there to say that, you know, just policy language in there that's this kind of language, opposed to procedural language.
Yeah.
Most of what's in that plan, I shouldn't say that. That's not true. I guess it's a combination of both. There is some procedural language in there where we thought we needed to be more specific. So in the instances where there's like a class schedule, we gave them like a sample schedule. So I don't know if it's exclusively one or the other. But if we are allowed for these purposes to put just policy language in there, something like this.
Well, I mean, that would be nice and easy, but the language says the modification shall be consistent with the plan. So basically, if you look at your language around transportation, does everything you have mentioned in there about transportation align with policy?
Yes. Okay. I know. Oh, yeah. Then I think in this case, in some of the other ones, I think we have to add some stuff. But I think in this case would be all set. So, for example, we have a diagram in there that shows what the seating pattern would be. That's a modification for normal transportation. So
Yeah.
there might be some other stuff. We'll look at it.
I think you could take this language at the beginning here and stick it in the plan. Subject to current law and regulation, the superintendent may suspend or modify policies related to transportation. And maybe you should put this in there, I don't know. I feel like it would be helpful for people to see in the plan that you have the authority to suspend or modify policies related to transportation.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think I would not include policy in the plan. I really wouldn't.
Okay, well,
I think policy belongs in the policy, but the plan needs to comply with policy.
yes, I agree, but then there has to be something in the plan that says that Jeff can make changes to transportation. I mean, that he might do that. That, you know, this is how we're expecting to start, for example, but when we change plans to all in-person or back to hybrid, or new students arrive, et cetera, that the superintendent may make changes.
Okay, I guess.
I guess we could do both. I mean, like I said, when I'm thinking about the policy, and I don't have it in front of me here, but we do have things as sort of higher level policy, and then we have where we thought it needed to be in more detail. We did put some stuff in there. So maybe we can do both things. Put this in there, put this red piece in there, and then also kind of flesh it out what it means.
Yeah, I guess I would concur with Cliff on this, Jeff, in that let's try not to make the two documents, the policy documents and the school plan, overlay each other with using the same language. I agree, we should consult the policy manual for policy. We consult the school plan for it's really an implementation plan, but for the districts, the state, MASC, I'm sorry, is saying for the purposes of the pandemic period, that back to school plan shall constitute the policy of the school district. It basically is saying, look, these are our rules for this pandemic period, and then it's going to cite in this pandemic policy anything specific that's going to change. So the policies language is going to be updated. You don't need to make the school plan look like a big policy document. You just need to understand that everything in that school plan is what's guiding decisions and policy implementation.
You know, I'm thinking about who the audience is. So the back to school plan, the audience is the parents and community. So what they're interested in are the nuts and bolts of what's going to happen and why you're making those decisions. But they're not necessarily interested in the policy that's pushing that. I mean, I think that the overarching policy, you know, if somehow we can make it readily available on the website, that's fine. If someone wants to see what the policy is, they can access it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we can make this document a standalone document that can be posted on the district webpage and can be posted with the policy manual, highlighted with the policy manual, so people see them together with the policy manual, you know, as a whole big document, but also can see there is a pandemic policy.
Yeah. Are you comfortable with that, Jeff?
Yeah.
Good.
So Jeff, your job here with the back to school plan is just to make sure that anything that references transportation and changes to transportation is in line with this. There's no conflict between what you're implementing and what our policy is about making changes to transportation. Okay?
Got it.
All right, the next one is walkers and riders, EEAA.
That's the same thing. Same language. Matter of fact, that one,
Oops.
EEAEEAA, EEAEC,
Yep, there's 4 of them.
and EEAG are all the same.
Yeah.
So I'll take care of it. I'll take care of that part.
Okay, so it's basically all things transportation.
Yeah,
As
Okay,
Cliff said, it's getting kids to and from
yeah.
school.
And it's just
Um,
those four, right?
Yes,
Okay, I'm gonna put those aside so I can deal with those separately, just to make sure we deal with those in the plan.
right, exactly.
All right, so I'll deal with those.
And, there's especially things like student conduct on the bus, because that relates to things like kids having to sit separately and wear masks and so on the bus,
Yeah,
transportation, or be delivered to school by parents themselves. That's another piece of this that's probably not even in the policy. So you just want to make sure that people understand that you can make changes to any of those ways of operating to accommodate this pandemic and changes in our, oh, here it is, student transportation and private vehicles. Okay, so you've got those four.
yeah.
And Cliff, is this red line language adequate to you?
Yeah, I think it goes along with what we discussed with the first one.
Okay,
You know,
I agree.
yeah.
And I think we could bring that language forward to the next school committee meeting, and get that addressed. And then there's one other language, a back to school plan reference, and that's homeschooling, IHBG. Sorry. Oh my goodness. IHBG. Homeschooling. This is our usual policy about homeschooling. And then,
What's the policy again?
homeschooling, IHBG. And the added language is for the pandemic is the back to school plan shall provide for students who are temporarily homebound due to illness, quarantine, or disability. It doesn't say provide what, but I'm kind of not sure what does that mean. I mean, you could put a lot of things into that. IHBG.
IHBG.
So what MASC appears to be saying is that that this policy regarding students who are being educated at home
Yeah,
has to apply to students who are temporarily sent home because of illness, quarantine, or disability. I'm not sure that this makes any sense.
This is a homeschool document.
Yeah.
When kids are homeschooled, we don't have any responsibility for them. Those are students who are temporarily homebound. Oh, this should be, there's another policy in here.
ABF.
Yes.
Which is homebound.
Yeah,
That's a different.
this one.
Yes. I think that language doesn't belong with the homeschooling.
I don't either.
Hang on one second. I have a cat attacking my feet. I have to dismiss him.
I've met your cats. I know what they're doing.
They're a lot bigger than when you first met them too. Okay, homebound instruction. So there are two lines they were recommending for this. The back to school plan shall provide for students who are temporarily homebound.
Yeah.
Plus, the superintendent and school committee should be mindful. I thought this was funny. That attainment of a high school diploma may render certain students ineligible for further services.
Yeah.
Well, I found that statement odd as well, and I did not know what it was referencing. Is there something else?
Well, they age out, right? So
They age out. But we already know that. We don't do that.
I felt like, I wonder why they were putting that there. And maybe we feel like we don't need it. I mean, there's nothing.
It certainly doesn't reference our district, and I won't speak to any other district, but there's a possibility that if you wanted to, if you didn't want to deal with that situation, and you provided a student with a diploma, that you would not have that responsibility. So,
Right.
but that's, you know, one, ethically, you shouldn't do it. And two, it's covered under special education laws. You can get in trouble for doing that stuff. So I guess that's why it says you got to be mindful of it. So, and we are. I don't.
Do you think the language needs to be in there, or we should just go ahead and add it, or it's not necessary?
I don't think it hurts. I mean, we do it anyway. I don't think it hurts as a reminder, but we don't issue diplomas so that someone does, in order to help someone age out of services. But I guess we could put it in there. I don't think it hurts.
All right, that's fine. So this after-school plan shall provide for students who are temporarily homebound. And so that provision is instruction to those students who are unable to attend classes for not less than 14 school days.
Yeah, and we do that.
So they have to meet the 14-day standard before they're eligible.
And the 15th day, they get a tutor.
Right.
But-
And that's 14 school days.
Yeah.
But in this case, that's not true, right? The back-to-school plan shall provide for students who are temporarily homebound due to quarantine. So wouldn't that mean that during the 14 days that you're quarantined, we have to provide instruction?
Yeah, well, if a student gets sick, let's say they have the flu, and really bad flu, or they have pneumonia, just under normal circumstances, they will get they get their work. They continue to get work to keep up. If it's determined that, let's say they get a flu, really bad flu, so we give them their assignments, and then the flu turns into pneumonia, so they don't come back after 14 days. On that 15th day, we then provide a tutor, because it goes beyond where we could reasonably provide instruction for them, hoping to keep them up with just sending home assignments. So the reasoning is that after that 14th day, they really need some extra help beyond being sent home assignments. And that's what we had planned to normally do. If somebody's home just temporarily, if they're self-quarantining, you know, in this case, they'd be able to, they really only miss 2 days a week. If there's a kid self-quarantining right now, they'd miss the 2 days that they'd be in school, still get the 3 days of remote learning under the hybrid plan. If we were full in, we would provide them the same services we normally would.
So I can't remember, but does the school plan stipulate that when a student goes into quarantine, that work will be provided, and that once the 14th day, school day standard has been met, a tutor will be provided?
I'm not sure if we could put that in there, but I know that's what we do normally. That's what we had planned to do, but I'll check that.
I think that if that's going to be our practice, I think it should be in the plan.
Yes, I agree. And I also, I don't see in the language of this policy any reference to tutor. I see,
Instruction.
yeah, which
And the implication is tutor, a live person.
oh, it could be
You have to do,
class or,
you have to do it by law. You can't, after 15, at day 15, you have to provide a tutor for a student.
okay, I
I
didn't.
mean,
I
it's not in here, but it's part of a law, a state law, that we have to do that. So,
Back in the day, I used to do this work for North Middlesex Regional High School. I got all the young women who were pregnant and who couldn't come to school, but they needed to be instructed.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make sure that language is in the plan.
And this language, is this language clear? This back-to-school plan should provide for students who are temporarily homebound due to illness, quarantine, or disability. So I guess I just feel like, so during the 14 days that they're in quarantine, teachers are sending homework?
Yeah, we'll take this policy and I'll make sure what we actually do is put in the plan.
Okay.
Yeah, it might be there. It just doesn't, I don't know.
It needs to be checked.
Yeah, it might be there. I just can't remember.
On the IHBG, I think that language should be taken out though.
Yeah,
That red language.
so Christy, I'm trying to remember, there was some confusion between these two.
I don't know why it would be there actually.
No, I don't know why it's there either, because these kids aren't coming to school anyways.
No,
Was this left, Christy, from one of our corrections? Remember when we went back and forth?
I'm checking right now, though. Let me see.
Will this homeschooling policy apply to those children whose parents are
Yeah.
not sending them back to school and will be employing one of the DESE approved platforms?
no.
No?
But there may be parents who say, we're going to do it ourselves, and then this would apply.
Yeah.
I'm checking on the MASC notice. IHBG is listed on with the back to school plan shall provide for students who are temporarily homebound due to illness, quarantine, or disability.
What page is that on the MASC document?
That's 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe it's page 5, the second bullet.
I see reference to IHBF. Oh, yeah.
IHBG.
Yep. And remote instruction for students in quarantine. Oh, yeah, that was another, yeah. Okay, we're not done with this. Yeah, they do list it for IHBG. Why would that be?
Makes no sense at all. None.
Homeschool kids are unenrolled from the school. They're not part of our school system. So we wouldn't be able to provide anything for them. Anyway, it'd be like us providing something for a kid in Clinton. But,
Right.
you know, we wouldn't do. I wonder why it's here. I wonder how it got here in the first place. I wonder what that rationale was.
I would not want to see this in this policy.
No, okay, so Christy, let's strike this from IHBG. But there is also another reference in the MASC stuff that says, it lists the IHBG and it lists IHBF and remote instruction for students in quarantine. I don't know what that is referring to. Do we provide remote instruction for students in quarantine?
That's homebound.
Remote instruction? We don't use that language though, do we?
No, we don't.
IHB. Remote instruction. Do we provide remote instruction? Not necessarily, right?
No.
Well, the way our policy is written, we provide instruction. It doesn't articulate how we provide that instruction.
Right.
We could do it remotely, given the pandemic, or we could perhaps provide a tutor. But
Well,
I prefer the vague language of instruction.
Yeah.
Well, we do. How do we define remote? They're in one place and they're getting instruction from us from another place. That's remote. Is it remote online? That's different.
Well, I mean, that's an important distinction for your plan, the back to school plan, Jeff. When we use the term remote throughout that plan, are we using the meaning of that consistently? Because I have the feeling we don't use the term remote instruction in our policies. I bet you we don't. It is used in the back to school plan, which is.
I'm thinking realistically, if someone is out longer than 14 days and needs instruction, it will be by Zoom. It will not be in person.
Yeah. Right.
So is that remote instruction? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it is, but it might be via a tutor on Zoom or it might be by enrolling in the state's, some course offered through the state's platform.
No, we wouldn't do that. No, because those require a different level of commitment. You would have to, we'd have to buy a seat
Okay.
for the student, they'd have to enroll into a course like they're a fifth grader. We see the idea of a homebound student is that student's coming back. It may be 3.5 weeks, it might be 4 weeks. So that's why we have to, at day 15, we just provide, not just, but we provide a tutor. That's to keep them up with the work that's being done in that classroom. And then the idea, as soon as they get better, they come back. So that's a temporary sort of situation.
Is that tutor ever the classroom teacher?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Okay.
But it could, I suppose it could be. I think we just hire somebody though. I think that's what they do.
So I agree.
I think if it's the teacher, that involves collective bargaining.
Okay, but I think leaving this word instruction leaves it up to us to determine the best means.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to clarify it at all, and I'm not recommending you do this, you could put either remote or in person, but I don't think I would do that.
If somebody's home, well, I guess if it wasn't quarantine related, it could be in person, I guess.
Well,
no, I think we don't need to clarify that.
It won't be in person. We won't send anybody there.
No.
Okay.
I think in the current climate and the fact that technology has advanced a lot in the last 6 months, it's likely to be remote.
Yeah. Right, but we don't need, I agree, we don't need to specify it here. We need to give ourselves the flexibility to respond in whatever way is appropriate.
Yeah.
So IHBG, we're striking the language. IHBF, we're keeping both of these statements. And we're not referencing remote instruction for students in quarantine. We don't, do we, remote instruction for students in quarantine? So Jeff, if somebody's in quarantine for 2 weeks, what's our obligation for remote instruction? Is that homebound instruction?
That's homebound. They get the assignments from their teacher.
From their teacher, okay.
Yes.
And that's by law, you're saying?
The tutor is by law. The
tutor is.
14 days it's just you know, so they can stay caught up.
Doesn't this policy here refer to after 14 days?
Not less than 14 days. Students are unable to return for not less than, yeah.
We're talking about remote instruction during the first 14 days.
Let me just close this. I can't see this whole thing. In accordance with.
I think this is saying, if you're out for more than 2 weeks, you're at risk. So we're going to make sure that you get instruction.
Yeah.
But this business of being in quarantine, what happens then? If you're in quarantine for 14 days, are we providing remote instruction?
Well, again, we do, our plan was to do what we normally do. We send home assignments, and I mean, teachers contact them, but you know.
But there's nothing here that says they have to do that, that's a policy in the district.
Well, then we can leave the last sentence. The MASC, you know, the back to school plan shall provide for students who are temporarily homebound due to illness, quarantine, or disability.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. And
that's it right there, just there.
You just have to make sure the school plan, back to school plan, Jeff, states that we will be providing some kind of instruction to students who are quarantining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that language is fine in this policy.
Yeah, you're right. The language is here. I just want to make sure that the back to school plan is consistent with that.
Yep.
Okay, Jeff?
Yep.
All right, so I think we, let's see, where are we? Homeschooling. All right, we have these 3 other ones for back to school plan. JIC, student discipline.
Just as an alert, I have to leave at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I think we need to end by 10:30, so that's what I'm gonna
Okay.
for, and we'll need to set another meeting. JIC, where's the reference to JIC?
I do think before we go, we should do the face covering, because you already voted on that, and that this policy we reflect it. And there's only one change in there.
We already voted on face coverings?
Yes,
We voted on the plan, which included face coverings.
yeah, so it's in there.
The same language, Jeff, or just that students will be wearing face coverings?
Well, in this one, it says, in paragraph 2, the last line said exempt from this policy are students in grade 1 and below.
Ah,
You already put in the plan and you voted on that they would not be exempt. So this policy
right.
would probably be done.
So you
Yes,
flip
I
over,
noticed that.
flip over to face coverings.
Yeah, it's only that one change, I believe.
Yeah, I agree,
Yeah, it's
Jeff.
only that one change. I think you should just strike that, just the last line in paragraph 2, and then it'll be in line with what's in the plan and what you voted on.
So take out this line. Christy, are you getting this?
Yes, every word.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so we're taking out this line, exempted from this policy of students in grade 1.
Yeah,
Should
so
we-
that's done.
Are pre-K students, I can't remember, Jeff, included in this?
We said everybody was in the building, so.
Okay. I think we should be explicit here.
Yeah, it said everybody, so this exempts people,
All individuals in school buildings.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the implication is every kid, every adult, every.
Yes.
everybody.
Yeah.
And what's the other part you said was, I wondered about this. This has trouble breathing. This, I hope that's not too generic.
Well, I think it covers a few things. It could be someone who's having an anxiety attack.
Yeah,
It could be someone who's asthmatic like myself, or sometimes I have to just pull it away from my face. And I don't know if that's related to anxiety also, but, or just just you feel something coming on. So it is a little general, but I think it fits a lot of different.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
We're
say
gonna have to be careful of monitoring that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But I like that the policy is pretty specific about how it makes it difficult for a parent to just absolve their child from a mask.
Yeah, no, I like this. It's in
I
line.
like that.
It's in line with the plan. It's in line with what you voted on. So
Yeah, I felt like there were, I did have a couple questions here. I felt like this line right here, when appropriate social distancing is enforced, should be underlined or bolded. Because that's the key. And we can't be waffling on that. So I'd like to see that just emphasized. And then the, this here, is this consistent with what we said? Face shields or physical barriers may provide an alternative. I thought we were, that was not an alternative.
I missed that. That's got to be taken out too. They
Yeah.
can't be used alone.
Yeah, I marked that on mine.
And that's in our plan too. I know that. So,
Okay,
well, I mean, we can put something in there. It can be used in conjunction with a face
yeah,
mask,
yeah,
but not alone. But
yes.
so maybe we could add that language.
Yeah, I think that could be better.
Maybe,
Could supplement the use of masks or something like that.
yeah.
You
No,
got,
I like what Jeff says. When face masks, I say, what did he just say that was really good?
Face shields or physical barriers may.
When
maybe-
used in conjunction with face masks.
Yes.
okay,
So you could start the sentence. When used in conjunction with face masks, face shields or physical barriers could provide.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Well, you said that. I'm just using your words.
Okay, Christy, I assume you got that one. And then I wondered about this. Is this true? I felt like the staff members are responsible for their own face coverings.
That's what that says, doesn't it?
Yeah, but is that what we're doing?
Yes. Yeah, that comes from the DESE. And then the last line, however, the district will supply disposable face coverings. So we've bought enough for everybody if they lose them for 12 weeks. I
mean,
think we actually have more than 12 weeks, but we were required to buy enough for everybody for 12 weeks, but only in the instances where theirs got destroyed during the day.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. It just didn't feel right to say you have to wear a mask all day and you have to go get your own mask.
Yeah.
It sort of feels like
I don't know, Susan. I don't think I agree with that because masks are a big thing now. You know, I mean, there's even couture for masks at this point. You know, I mean,
well,
I have a fist.
Masks to fit you comfortably.
I have a fistful of them because I'm, you know, out meeting people all the time. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I want to check on that. And then this, I noticed in a lot of these, in the general policy, hang on just a second. Somewhere. No, I'm not seeing it. I thought in the general policy, there was a statement about the overarching policy. There was a statement about these being in effect until the governor declared the emergency over. I'm not seeing that right now as I look for it. But this, this policy will remain until rescinded by the school committee. Is that what it should be? I almost feel like it should be in place until the superintendent or the governor or somebody says the emergency is over. But in the school committee meeting where that's decided, there may be a big lag time.
But I can't officially rescind the school committee policy.
Well, the governor, I mean, when would we say this policy is no longer needed?
Well, I think it's incumbent on the school committee, since it's a school committee policy, to make a decision based on, you know, whatever state guidance is provided.
Okay. I just am thinking, I'm assuming that we would keep this in place until the governor said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at that point, that and, you know, the other reference there is the Center for Disease Control.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's, since those are the references that were used to decide this policy in the first place.
Yeah.
And I
Okay,
think
well, we'll leave it the way it is then and assume that those are our reference points. But I just wondered if there might be a lag time here. If there's, you know, the governor says the pandemic is over, we're out of the woods, and then it's 3 weeks until the next school committee meeting.
Well, that might be, but remember that it also gives me permission to modify these as we go along. So I can modify the policy until you have a time to vote on it.
Well, does it, we don't have that language in this, that you can do that.
No, it's in the general language, isn't it?
No, I don't think that you can just modify anything you want. The language is very particular to these.
No, what's the general language? Isn't that in the general language?
I don't, that you can change anything you want?
No, not anything I want, or else I'd have got rid of most of these.
Yeah, no, I don't think the face.
I already got rid of most of the whole policy book 2 years ago.
Okay, the language in the general policy reads, the superintendent, with the advice and consent of the school committee, may suspend or modify individual district policies to address as declared by the governor. Such suspension of policy shall expire at the end of the emergency as declared by the governor.
Right.
Where, oh, there it is. Yeah.
So I could do that until you vote on it.
Okay, so
Not
then,
all of them, just the ones related to this pandemic.
You have to get our advice and consent first.
yeah, I'm just looking back here. So face covering, you
Not
can
that I'm
make,
power hungry, but that's
we're
what the
saying
document
that
says.
you can make changes here. And
Sure, Cliff.
but you have to, no, you can't make changes. That's wrong. You can propose to the school committee.
Yeah, advice and consent of the school committee.
And maybe in accordance with the governor's or state law regulation.
Yes, it's as declared by the governor.
Okay. I'm going to put those into place there. And does that need to, that doesn't need to be negotiated in any way, right?
What do you mean by that?
The use of face coverings, masks, if, to release them, to say, no, you don't need to do this anymore.
No, not if the governor says, if it's a governor's order.
Yeah, I mean, if the governor says they don't have to wear them, I mean, how are we going to enforce it?
Okay. And that would never come from the education commissioner. That would be governor, right?
It
Okay.
would, but it'd have to go through the governor first.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to leave it like that.
Commissioner might try.
Yeah.
Now,
Right.
now, Cliff.
No, don't get me started.
Okay. That's good. So we have face covering done.
Yeah, I think so.
Now we have, there are still these 3 back to school plan references down here, Jeff.
Yeah,
And I just want to look at these quickly because it would be nice if you had all the school plan stuff in hand as you're finishing this for submission. JIC.
oh, let's see. Private school,
JIC student discipline. And the language added is a long policy.
It is.
Well, we're all about discipline in education, you know.
Right. The back to school plan recommended by the superintendent and subject to the approval of the school committee shall contain protocols for serving students who are disciplined or suspended during the pandemic. Protocols. Do you have protocols in the plan, Jeff?
We have protocols, but they're not in the plan, so I'll just have the principals add them.
Okay. Further, the superintendent shall provide in these back to school plans provisions for students.
It's grammatically not correct.
There should be a who here, I think.
Yeah.
For students who were disciplined or suspended, or who may elect to remain at home under the provisions of the policies related to homeschooling, or who may elect remote learning in the interests of safety or health concerns. Provisions for students who were disciplined or suspended, or.
See, that homeschooling thing is in there again. And that should, I don't think that word should be in there.
I kind of thought the whole thing should stop after the word suspended.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this looks very deliberate, so I don't know what that's about. Or who may elect to remain at home.
And what's that got to do with discipline?
I don't know. They should provide in these back to school plans provisions for students who are disciplined or suspended. Provisions for students who may elect to remain at home. Should I?
You know what I would take out after or? Who may elect to remain at home under the provisions of these policies related to homeschooling. I would take that out and just keep the other line.
Yeah, I don't think this belongs here.
Does this part, this last part belong?
No, I don't think any of that belongs. Jeff, do you want to keep the who may elect remote learning in the interests of safety or health concerns?
Well, I don't think it's related. It's somewhere else, but I don't think it's related to discipline.
Yeah, I don't see it in here. I don't believe it belongs here.
I'm not sure why that's there.
I know, I think I need to ask about this. So let's take it out. Chrissy, let's strike that, but let me write to Dorothy about why that's there. Are we missing something? JIC.
I mean, I understand that these recommendations from the MASC are generic and that every school system has slightly different policies. So this may reflect a reality that some school systems mush together some of these things, and where we keep them discreet.
Right.
You know, maybe there's a place that somewhere along the line, they suspended a kid and then said, you know, we don't want you back. Or maybe they gave them the option. This is what they used to do in the old days. You can be expelled or you can be homeschooled. You know, so it probably comes from something like years ago. I mean, I can't imagine anybody doing it today. But there were a time when people used to give, you know, schools would give those kind of options to kids. So
let's strike it. Let's just take it out. I think we're safe. It doesn't relate to how we operate, it seems.
Right.
I don't see the 10. If there's something else I'm writing to Dorothy about, I'll ask her about it, but it doesn't seem like it's critical. All right, that's JIC. And then we have JK. Student conduct, and this is the language. The back to school plan recommended by the superintendent and subject to the approval of school committee shall contain protocols for serving students who are disciplined or suspended. That's the same language, Jeff. And again, we have the same language here. So Christy, let's strike this again after the or and after. And Jeff, you just got to make sure that the plan includes the protocols related to student conduct.
Got it.
Okay. And then we have JLCC. Communicable diseases. During the COVID pandemic, the superintendent, now this is the only place I saw reference to giving principal powers through policy, and I had questions about that. During the COVID pandemic, the superintendent or principal of a school may revise or suspend provisions of policy to facilitate the education of students at risk or with special physical needs or their family caregivers, including but not limited to caring for or educating students with disabilities, illness, pregnancy, child rearing responsibilities, or special education needs consistent with law and regulation. Subject to the provisions of the back to school plan, the superintendent may establish protocols, again, Jeff, for tracking student contacts as a means of locating others from whom students may contract or expose other persons to the COVID. Chrissy, can you correct that spelling? COVID-19. Such protocols will be consistent with law and regulation, be consistent with standards to protect the privacy of students or families and other persons. So,
I don't know that I like that language.
which part?
The first part that says the superintendent or principal. I think it should say something that like the superintendent or the principal in consultation with the superintendent, because it's possible, you know, and I don't think our principals would do it, but they make a decision and I never know about it.
Yeah. And I'm imagining that it's there because you're dealing with students with special needs and they may have to make a decision in the moment saying, okay, this is not going to work for this child. You need to do X, right? Do you think that's why it's there? This is about communicable diseases.
I don't know. If it were a discipline thing where they, you know.
No, it's not discipline.
No, I know. If there was a discipline, I could see that. They would have to make a decision right then and there. And, you know, there was some kind of emergency thing that they had to do. But in this case, I don't see why they wouldn't have to, I don't see a reason they wouldn't have time to call the superintendent and say, this is what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable, number one, giving principals permission for this or giving them the burden of making this decision.
Yeah, this is a decision I think that like, I don't even know that I would make it alone. I would I would talk, talk to principals, and this is really a discussion kind of deal, I think.
Yeah,
Well,
I just don't want to see a principal. I don't want to see a principal in there making those decisions. I mean, we
If
don't give principals.
what about, Cliff, if you have students with complex special needs that you're servicing on the ground and they're, in the moment you realize they're not able to, some policy we have here around communicable disease here.
All he has to do is pick up the phone, or she has to do is call the superintendent.
Or at the very least, they should be calling the director of pupil personnel.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Because that, I would trust that, like, if they got in touch with Karen, Karen knows those laws inside and out, that she would be able to make a decision on the fly. And my guess is they wouldn't do it unless they called her anyway.
Want to put director pupil personnel in here instead of?
At least that, I think, would be in consultation with the director or the principal, the superintendent or the principal, in consultation with the director of pupil personnel.
Okay, so Christy's getting that modification. How do we feel about the rest of it? To facilitate the education.
Tracking contacts. Okay.
Yeah. I think that's better language, Jeff.
Yeah.
And more realistic.
Yeah. A principal, I never met a principal who would make that kind of decision.
No, you're right.
I mean, I never did in 20 years, and I never knew anybody else who would do it.
Okay. Subject to the provisions of the back to school plan, the superintendent may establish protocols. This is may establish protocols for tracking contact tracing, basically.
Yeah.
And I think, and honoring the obviously privacy of students, families, and other persons. That's a key thing. So do you have anything in the back to school plan about contact tracing, Jeff?
No, we don't. And the reason why we didn't is because we made a decision that we would, two things. We do have something in there that says if a student gets sent home, we would contact all the contacts that we thought the student had. But we also realized that we really can't effectively do that because of the way kids ride buses. So instead, we made a decision that if we had a case in the school, we would notify parents and close the entire school down, because we realized that we could not effectively contact trace all the way back. So we would notify the parents that there was a case in a particular grade, and in that we would be closing the schools down for 14 days for quarantining purposes. Because there's really no way we would be able to effectively do that.
So this language, if we leave it in, this language just allows you the option to engage in some kind of contact tracing if there's some scenario where it would be effective. It doesn't say that you have to, it doesn't say you have to spell it out. It just says that you may establish that kind of protocol.
And we did to the extent that we were able to do it. I mean, we thought it out. We said we can do it to some degree, and we realized that we're limited. So here's what we decided to do because of that limitation.
So this language is okay to leave in,
So
right?
that's okay, because it does say may establish.
Okay.
So as a practical matter, I want to make sure I'm clear about this, which isn't actually specifically related to the policy. So when a child is or teacher is formally diagnosed as having COVID, the school nurse is notified, knows of this, yes?
Yes.
The school nurse has a reporting structure with the state that she has to comply with, right?
Correct.
So in effect, that may trigger the state's contact tracing. Sorry about that. That may trigger the state's contact tracing, assuming it's still in place.
Yeah, I'm sure it would, and I'm sure that I would get a call that said, no, you had a positive case. What have you done?
Yeah.
In which case I would give them as much specifics as possible, and then say we sent everybody home to self-quarantine for 14 days.
Yeah.
So then, if they wanted a list, well, essentially, once you self-quarantine everybody for 14 days, you've covered it all.
Yeah.
No, you haven't left anything. Because originally we thought we'd be able to maybe send one class home or two classes, but it's the bus riding that gives us the problem because of the way buses pick kids up.
Yeah, but well, let's say, a student was being driven to school by their family and wasn't on the bus.
Well, that might be a different situation, but if it depends where in the day. I mean, if that kid goes to MASC breaks, is there another class there that they're close to?
Yeah, but you could track that, right? It's possible.
But
so you may think about that. You may have protocols for contact tracing. So I almost see this like another one of those decision trees where, if the student rode the bus and if the student was in the, classrooms in the main part of the building, for example, maybe contact tracing doesn't happen, everybody's sent home. But if the student was driven to school and if the student was in whatever, then, and the student, was not on the playground during any shared or lunchroom, any shared spaces, then, you do some contact tracing. So I think that you might think about that protocol a little more, because I think the idea that the state may be saying, we want to trace these kids, and there are circumstances in which tracing contact may be useful and may prevent us from having to shut down an entire school.
Yeah.
We should think about what are the conditions in which that might happen. But that's a kind of protocol that would be good to have in the back to school plan at a high level. So it sounds to me like this language is okay. Is that right, Cliff? Just that he can establish that. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. So just because we need to wrap up, that gets us through these back to school plans. It gets us through the first part of the general policy and the new face mask policy. We didn't get through these notes. There are several places, and I think maybe we can do this really fast, but there are several places where it said to just insert. It was like that note that we read before about reminding the school committee that if they, what was the language that we had before? If you graduate special needs students, they may no longer be able to access other services. Those kinds of notes that they didn't change the content of the policy at all. I'm wondering if we can agree to just go ahead and stick that language in.
I think that's fine. I read through all those. I didn't.
They're really these IHB ones.
Yeah, nothing jumped out at me that was like, wow, this is a problem.
Yeah, no, me either. And the MOA one, we had said, Jeff, before that we weren't going to alter that policy until we're ready to really revisit the whole policy. And so Christy and I were talking and thinking, well, maybe we can take the language from this public safety officers thing. I forget what the language was, Christy, and put it down in the visitors to school policy. So that if the school resource officer could be considered as a visitor to the school, that he's covered or she's covered in this visitors to the school policy. I don't think that they were suggesting any substantive changes to the school resource officer role. Where was that? I don't remember where that. We can leave the MOA one. Let's come back to that on the next one. So we've gotten almost everything in these first three columns, and we should bring those to the next school committee meeting. Do we want to hold to having 2 reads on all these things?
Susan, you know what else is an easy one? JJ, the co-curricular and extracurricular activities. That's a pretty, that's
But
a pretty
I'd rather wait and kind of do that within the context of some others. I'm concerned about time. Let's come back to that, Jeff. I don't think we have to have that done for today, do we?
When are we going to meet again?
Well, that's the next question.
Well, here's the issue. I think the issue with those is that they're a big deal to people, and that in sports. And I think the commission is going to come out next week with its guidance on that to say you can go ahead with sports and extracurricular or you can't.
To me, that's a reason to not tamper with that policy today then.
No, it's not, because it says subject to law, regulations, and standards. So that would cover it. It's up to you. It doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't matter to me, but.
Yeah, I would just assume wait, because I don't want to feel like I'm rushing through these policy pieces, the actual policy changes. So let's pick up at this point at the next meeting. And I'm thinking we have a school committee meeting on Monday, right? Is that right?
Tuesday.
We don't meet on Mondays, we meet on Tuesdays.
Tuesday, sorry. 18th on Tuesday. And so the things that we discussed today, and Christy, you and I can go back and forth as needed, but we could bring for a first read for school committee. Do we need to press it all and pass, not do first reads and just approve things? Are we on any?
That's totally at Jim's discretion.
Okay. So I don't know if legally or just in terms of having plans in place, Jeff, because we have a meeting on the 18th and then we meet again, what, September 4th? No, what's our September meeting date?
15th,
15.
the 15th.
Just one meeting in September?
Yeah.
15th and the 29th of the 2 dates in September.
29th. Okay, I don't have those on my calendar. Okay, 15 and 29. So we wouldn't, school starts, students are back in play on the
14th.
14th. So do we want to have these, do we need to have these policies voted on before school starts? I'm kind of feeling like we should, but.
Well, Susan, why don't you talk with Jim and see if he would be open to just having them on the agenda for approval.
Yep.
Well, because he would have to suspend the first read approval rule, not me, not you.
Yeah.
And
I just didn't know if we didn't feel like we had to have them done or that there's not a compelling reason to have them done, I wouldn't ask that. But if we feel like, look, we will support Jeff and the decisions that he has to make to get these done.
Yeah, I'm in support of it, as long as we get the documents to the committee members in advance so they can read them.
Right.
Actually, they are in, they're in the drive right now, and I have made all of the corrections except the notes on those IHB policies. Haven't done that, but the other ones I've already done the edits, and they're already in the
Yes.
Google folder for the general committee.
Okay.
On which date, Christy?
August 18th.
August 18th. Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. That's why they pay her the big bucks.
Oh, she's funny.
And so let's find another meeting then, because if there's another meeting on September 15th, we should try to get the rest of these done and up for a vote for approval before that 15th meeting. So Jeff, do you want to, should we schedule this offline, or would you like to, or you and Christy like to throw out some possible dates right now to meet in the first or second week of September, early in the second week?
I have the calendar up.
Whenever I'm free, it's fine with me.
Let's see. Yes.
I like 9 a.m.
Okay.
We could, he's free the whole first week, August 31st till the 4th. There's nothing on the schedule right now.
Wow.
How about Thursday the 3rd?
I have a day where there's nothing on my schedule.
A
I
week.
know.
It's a
I
whole
know. It's still
All right.
early though. It'll fill up. Don't worry.
9/3, Thursday at 9 o'clock.
Hey.
Let, should we say 9 to 10:30 or will we need more time?
I'd say 9 to 10:30. That way I block it out. And
Okay. All right. Christy, sound good?
Okay, and are we gonna meet on Zoom again or are we gonna meet in person?
I think Zoom because I can't actually drive.
Okay, no problem. I'll set it up.
And I personally prefer Zoom.
But it gives easier access for people who want to tag in if they want to come into the community too. Okay, so that's good. We've, Christy, the other thing that I will do is to make a version of this document that could be used for public posting and a graphic that sort of helps situate decision-making within this broader context. I'm not sure if it will be this I'm gonna, let me fool around with a couple of ideas and you can pass them by Jeff and see if they're useful.
Sure.
All right, anything else we need to consider before we wrap up for today?
Just Christy, make sure, Christy, you have it on file that school committee members said you should be making big bucks.
I am going to, we have it on tape. Thank you, Haley. It's on video. It'll be posted on cable access. So, that'll be good.
You might want to post that with Dr. Henry's name on it. You know.
And maybe I could send it to Bob too.
Yeah.
I was wondering with Cliff and Susan, would you have 2 extra minutes? Just a conversation I just wanted to have with you two.
Sure.
Okay.
It's just that I have to leave at 11, so it's got to be short.
It'll be 2 minutes.
All right, 2 minutes.
The other thing I'm going to do, just to make note, is I'm going to contact Russ about that harassment policy.
Okay, sounds good. Let me know what he says.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you all.
Okay.
And so we'll sign off. We'll adjourn the meeting. Motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Seconded. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, policy subcommittee is adjourned.